Hello everybody, and how have you all been? I know it's been quite a long time since the last video I posted here, and I would like to first of all apologize for my very long hiatus. I think it was about a year ago that I posted my last video, and I think that was just to highlight a trip I took to a local museum, to an exhibit they had there. And since then I just haven't had much time to post videos. I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version of what's been going on with me lately, if you are interested. If not, you can skip ahead to some of the other things I have to talk about, and I'll leave a timestamp like here or something, and you can jump ahead if you want. But basically, what's been going on with me lately is that I finished school. I was going for a welding and metal fabrication diploma. So after school I did apply at a place and got a job, but it really wasn't working out for me. And the place I was working at was taking up like way too much of my personal time. My shift was a second shift position, and technically it was supposed to be from 2:30 until 11 o'clock at night, but it was never 2:30 to 11. It was always 2:30 to 12, and then they started making it mandatory to stay until 1 in the morning, and then come in on certain Saturdays after I've just worked 50 hours. And the increasing demands, the increasing stress, the just decaying conditions of the work environment itself, and the whole everything just was starting to become not worth it. And I had to ask myself, is this where I want to be in a few years yet, or if this is what I want to do for the rest of my life as a career path? And frankly, the answer was no. So I've decided that this time I'm going to go back to school for something that's going to be a much better fit for me. I'm going to try to find some kind of career guidance and counseling that will allow me to talk about what I'm looking for in a career, and hopefully those advisors will be able to point me in the right direction to something that's going to make me happier in the long term. So eventually here I'll be going back to school. In the meantime, I'll have to find part-time work. I did just quit the job I was talking about before, actually only a few days ago. But anyway, that's the long and short of it, and I'm currently trying to figure myself out and all that. And you may be wondering if in all this time I've had any time for Gunpla or anything like that, and basically the short answer is no, unfortunately. I have really only very recently started building a new kit, which was the Real Grade Build Strike, and I picked that up actually kind of as a birthday present type thing at a local hobby shop, and I really like that kit actually. It's turning out pretty cool. I don't have a whole lot of it built yet, like I have one leg and the midsection done, but I'm liking what I see so far. But as far as the rest of, Gunpla and video making with Gunpla has gone, I really just don't have a lot of time or space to build or display more Gundam models. So another thing that has sort of held me back on building kits is the fact that my air compressor that I had been using for at least a couple of years has gone on the fritz, and it now leaks air continuously. So I'm able to build pressure with it in order to spray, but if this compressor is not constantly running, that pressure is going to just drain right out. So I could probably only ever use it in short stretches and such, and that makes it pretty impractical to use for bigger projects and everything. So the idea would be that I'd have to probably buy a new compressor in order to really build kits again and paint them the way I'd want to. So for that reason and several others actually, Gunpla is something I'm probably going to have to put on the back burner for an indefinite period of time until I can get my life and my situation into a better sort of place. So I'm sorry if that is disappointing to my longtime subscribers. I do apologize, and I hope, though, that some of the other things I'll be discussing here, some of my other interests and newly acquired collections and hobbies, will be something you're interested in as well. One of the things I did manage to do recently was I took another trip out west. I remembered when I was young that when I would watch all of my dinosaur tapes and TV shows, some of them would talk about a place known as Dinosaur National Monument. And for years it was always one of those things I never thought I'd get to see. And so recently, though, it just sort of crossed my mind, and I was looking at sort of the itinerary of how you'd get there and back, and I realized if I had a week off, I would be able to get there and back with plenty of time. So that's what I did. I went out to Dinosaur National Monument. I started out in my town in Wisconsin, drove I think through Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, through the Colorado Rocky Mountains, and finally into Utah itself, and then a little town called Vernal, which serves as something of a home base for people who want to visit Dinosaur Monument. That town is pretty cool. Has all these little kitschy dinosaur landmarks and signs and so on and so forth. They have their own little natural history museum there, which I also visited, and the monument itself is really quite spectacular. Basically, the history, I'll do a very brief rundown, is that a man named Earl Douglas found these bones in the dirt, and he recognized that this was such a site that if they would build an actual gallery hall around these entombed fossils, they would really be able to draw a crowd and be very educational. And so it was established as a national monument, a federal national monument. I forget the year, but I can post it up here somewhere. And I definitely got a lot of photos and video clips of my trip there and back. So I have a video that I have prepared up, and I can have that posted here probably in another day or so. And I hope you guys will look forward to seeing that, because it was a really fun trip. I enjoyed it, and then the video itself was really fun to make. So I hope you guys will give it a look. And relating to my trip, back last Christmas, my mom actually got me a fossil as a gift. Now before then, I had sort of dabbled in the idea that maybe I would want to start my own little fossil collection one day, but I never really thought that I would start it like now. I'd wait till maybe I was a little older or something. But what I got as a Christmas gift is this Spinosaurus tooth. This is a genuine 100-million-year-old dinosaur tooth. And when you really break it down and think about it, it's pretty incredible that this tooth was once inside the mouth of a living, breathing Spinosaurus. And when it died, it fell into the mud, or when the tooth fell out, it got preserved in some kind of sediment. By the looks of it, it was some kind of sandstone. Maybe you can see the gritty sandstone texture there. The actual organic material then became replaced by stone. It was preserved, lay dormant for millions and millions and millions of years, and finally was discovered by somebody who picked it up, brought it in, and now it's sitting in my hand. Something that reaches back to a time before any of us even existed. And if their time hadn't ended, ours may never have began. So when you really hold a fossil, you're holding something that is kind of like a story of life on Earth, but also a connection to the animal itself that this fossil came from. So that's pretty cool, I think. And so I have a lot of other little fossil critters and teeth and other things, but I didn't want to show all of it here. So if you're interested in this, and if you'd like to see more of the collection that I have, leave a comment down below and I will be more than happy to try to make a video about it and show you what I got. But my other main thing that I have to show here is something of a newly acquired hobby. And it relates to Star Wars. So back when I was a kid, I enjoyed Star Wars and I liked the movies, but I don't think I was ever really that big of a fan. In more recent years, I started rewatching the movies again, watched the new movies that have come out recently, played some of the video games and stuff, and I've just sort of become more fond of it as I've grown older. And one of the things that even as a kid I always was interested in were the reproduction lightsabers that the different companies would make. And they were either very, very cheap little plasticky toys with the accordion style blade that would throw out and probably break if you looked at it hard enough. Or else it was something of a high-end replica with a glass blade attached to it where you couldn't even swing it around without risking breaking it, and it was mostly like a display piece. You know, between those two extremes there wasn't really anything to latch onto, and so that was something I had to kind of put on the back burner, and I've kind of forgot about it for many, many years. Until more recently when these new movies started coming out, and now the world is in kind of a lightsaber renaissance, kind of a craze that people want lightsabers now. And different companies are now starting to produce very good high-end quality battle-ready lightsabers. Things that sport high-strength aluminum construction, high-power LEDs, good soundboards that play a whole myriad of different kinds of sounds and different sound fonts, as they're known. Basically that just means that if you have sort of a theme of a sound type you want, like the different sound effects that, like, let's say Darth Vader's saber makes versus, say, what sounds come out of Luke's or Obi-Wan's saber or what have you. Plus a whole other different, you know, market of random original fonts that have come about, you know, either based on what have come through video games or just various forms of inspiration here and there from many different areas. You know, but these sabers are really not only works of art, they're functional, and they're quite technologically advanced compared to some of the things that have come before them. And I ended up making my first real lightsaber purchase from a company known as Vader's Vault. And I would strongly suggest that if any of you are interested in buying a custom lightsaber, buy it through them. They are probably one of the best, if not the best, group out there that are making these. And the one I purchased was called Wrath. Now this lightsaber, you may be able to tell, was based on Sauron's hammer from the prologue of Lord of the Rings. When he shows up in that giant battle at the beginning of the very first movie during the flashback, you see him with this big, huge mace hammer weapon that he's using to bang everybody aside. And Vader's Vault took that design and incorporated it into a lightsaber. And you can see here they did a very good job of it. Has lots of beat up, weathered looking appearance, except for the switch, which I bought a gold one for this, and it represents, of course, Sauron's ring. And the rest of it here, very sharp and aggressive hammer looking, very awesome design. And this thing is solid. This thing would hurt somebody if you hit it with him. This thing is very dual worthy if you wanted to. And I will fire it up in a bit, but if you remember when I was mentioning before about high powered LEDs in here, what you see down there, hopefully, those 3 little circles there, those are 3 LEDs wired together into a special kind of lens. And those LEDs are so bright that if you were to accidentally look at one, it would be equivalent to maybe looking at the sun for half a second. I mean, they are very, very bright. So what a lot of people do when they don't have a blade in this saber is that they will put in what's known as a blade plug. And a blade plug basically just blocks some of that light while sometimes allowing some of it through for added effect. And sometimes they design these plugs to look like some kind of mechanical detailing or some sort of physical feature of the lightsaber itself. And other times they take more creative licenses with these sort of things, which is what I did. I made a blade plug out of this acrylic tubing, and on top of it I glued a eye of Sauron. I actually made this eye. I printed out an image of the eye itself, sized it properly, and then glued on this glass eye cabochon on top of the paper. This looks like it was a pretty simple thing to do, but this was a lot harder than it looks. When you try to do these glass eyes, you're always getting little air bubbles in there, and this is one of the very few that turned out properly. And these acrylic rods, even as small as they are an incredibly difficult thing to cut, even with like a Dremel, but it was definitely worth it. And what you do is you stick your blade plug in, like so. Trying to line it up right. And then down here you have this retention screw. This is what holds in your plug or the blade. And believe it or not, this little screw is enough to keep the blade in during heavy dueling. It's not going anywhere. And then you take your hex wrench or your Allen key, depending what you want to call it. Doesn't need much, especially if you're just putting the plug in. And then you're ready to turn it on and show people your new lightsaber without blinding them. Now, when I mentioned sound fonts earlier, they often make fonts that have to do with, say, a certain character or a certain sound type. And, you know, like I said, they make them for Vader or Luke or what have you. I made one for Sauron. So with my video editor, I, took an existing font, added different sound effects that belong to Sauron in the Lord of the Rings movies, and I made my own Sauron sound font. Now, right now, this saber is in its deep sleep mode. So you need to wake it up by pushing one of the 2 buttons that exist on here, either the main one or your little clicky auxiliary button. And I can show you more about what that does later. But right now, without further ado, let's wake it up. That is Sauron saying, "You cannot hide." And when you turn it on, pretty cool. I just can't get over how cool that is. And I tried to have Sauron's voice echo through, but You hear what it did there? As it was trying to say one more thing, a swing was enabled. There's something up with this where the vibration from the speaker is messing with the motion sensor somehow. So when he tries to say another line, he gets cut off by a swing. Because he thinks, the motion board thinks you're trying to swing it. But that's something I can probably adjust later through different settings and through editing the font itself. But and you can sort of hear the actual hum here. I gave it this real deep, dark sound. And then I added the like whipping wind sound effect, like when Frodo has the ring on and he's in the shadow realm. It's that sort of background noise going on. Anyway, I can show you what happens when, like, let's say you were to hit something. And then I mentioned this little auxiliary button here. If you just tap it, it does a blast or deflect noise. If you hold it down, it creates a sound effect like you're in a blade lockup session where you're struggling with somebody else. So when you hold it down, here's the sound that I made. That is Sauron's voice saying "One ring to rule them all" in black speech. So, when you're ready to turn it off, hold the button down, and that little noise that we made was one of the times when Frodo pulled off the ring and escaped from Sauron's gaze. So I always thought that would make like a good blade retraction thing. And if you didn't notice before, with this golden switch, when you turn it on, it's got this orange ring here. Now I did that color to represent when the ring is near fire in the movies, and all the black speech lettering comes on to the side of the ring there. Mostly it's there for effect, but it's sort of thematic as well. So I really liked this saber when I got it, and when I ordered it, all the wheels in my head started turning, like making this blade plug and making sure it had the ring on it and all that, and making the sound font for it. But I even took it one step further, and I made a costume, a Halloween costume, around this saber. And I have a couple pictures of how that turned out. I call this cosplay Darth Sauron. And basically the quote-unquote story behind it would be if the One Ring made its way into the Star Wars universe somehow, and somebody, a Sith, a Jedi, not sure who, found the ring, became corrupted by it, and decided to actually attach it to a lightsaber. That way he could channel the power of Sauron through an intermediary object and actually wield that kind of power. So Sauron himself is the blade of this saber. It is the voice of this saber. It is the saber. It is Sauron's new form, basically. So, yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how that came out. I actually entered a little bit of a costume contest, and though I didn't win the contest, I definitely was a finalist, and that was pretty cool. I got a lot of stares and, like, accolades and everything, so that was really fun, and I might break that costume out again this year. Anyway, in those pictures you probably saw the blade that was in there. Well, I have it sitting right here, and I can sort of show you how that looks, because we're definitely not done talking about this saber and everything it can do. Here we have a Ripper blade. It's called Ripper blade because this is a product of Ripper blades. They make blades like this out of acrylic with all the lightning and effects and everything. He's got lots of different designs, and he does make other more traditional looking blades, or like Kylo Ren style blades that have like the lightning shooting through like the round blade, like the side blades. And yes, there are companies that make the crossguard saber, and even Vader's Vault has one in the works. They're going to try to release one. Here you can see how it looks in the saber up close, unlit for now. I just love the way it accents this. It's not too huge, it's not unmanageable, but it's definitely imposing, and looks a little cooler than just your average round lightsaber polycarbonate blade. But we'll put the retention screw on this just so it doesn't fall out. There you go. And now, with this auxiliary switch, we're going to explore some of the other sound fonts on here. If you hold it down, it switches through different fonts. Now that was just the boot up noise to describe what font you're actually on. This one's called Bane, I think named after Darth Bane from Knights of the Old Republic, I think, but I'm not positive. I just think it's a really cool sounding font, very dark, very deep, menacing, and I think it fit this design very well. And one of the other things you'll notice right away about this saber is that it's not just that red-orange, it's purple now. Give you a listen to that font. Real dark and menacing. Give you a closer look at the blade. I can't begin to tell you how much I love this thing. Another font on here
Fulcrum
is this one. I take this one as more of like if it was, you know, just pure light energy or something. So this one's supposed to be white, but as you can see the battery is draining a little bit right now, and it's starting to take on a little bit more of a pinkish hue. That's just the red dye dominating. But the LED in here is an RGB LED, which means red, green, blue. And if you hold down, or hold this button and this button at the same time, you can switch colors. Now we're in sort of like a lime green, red, orange, like on my Sauron font, This is a nice yellow. Normally it's brighter and more whitish than this, but because the battery is a little low right now, all the colors kind of get a little deeper and not as bright. Here's green, regular blue, sort of a cyan blue color, purple again. Ah, and this one. This pink is actually like a really perfect beam saber pink color, like Gundam. It's just, I can't tell you how much I love this color. It just works so well. And then back to white. I have a slightly different, cooler tone white for the flash.
Cyber assassin.
Here's another font that I think is pretty cool. Again, using that pink color I love so much. Next one's like your basic average light side sound font, and I've got the nice cyan color on that. And last but not least, standard red Sith Darth Vader type of sound font. So that's all the fonts on here right now. I do have others like saved on my computer that I've bought online and everything, but this is basically the pride and joy of my lightsaber collection. And that collection is actually growing. I do have another saber coming from Vader's Vault. That probably won't get here until sometime next year. But I'm sure it'll be worth it because it is the most iconic lightsaber design of all time. Luke's lightsaber from the very original film. They had a run of it. I thought it looked cool, so I picked it up. And just a little bit of a disclaimer so you're not shocked by a sticker price here. These things do carry a rather hefty price tag, and I've only bought one when I knew I've saved up enough and could afford it. So I would say, you know, only bother with these things if you know that you're just absolutely gonna love them to pieces. And I absolutely love that lightsaber to death. However, there is more to say about lightsabers in general with this new hobby of mine. There are people and groups of people who find ways of making their own lightsabers. And one of the places I've gone to do that is the Custom Saber Shop. And so I have here a couple empty hilts that I'm hoping eventually to turn into fully installed pieces. I don't really have any names for these just yet, but the designs are as you see them. Bought this little red switch. I think it was from AliExpress, sort of like an eBay, Amazon type thing. The rest of the components came from the Custom Saber Shop, and I plan to have this section leather wrapped. I will do that myself. There'll be a chassis with some electronic components in here. The LED will be housed up here, wiring for the switch around here. And I actually have a blade plug that I think will work pretty well for this. This I bought on eBay from a seller known as Defcon Bird. It's this metal ring with an actual clear jewel section up top here, so you can actually see some light shining through there, as if it were some kind of crystal or something. And here I have a picture to show you of basically the kind of color scheme I'm thinking of going with. This is subject to change, and I don't know exactly how the colors will turn out, so it might look a little different, but basically we're looking at a deep brown leather wrap with some bronze and gold accents here and there. And I think that looks pretty interesting. And then just envision this drawing with the red switch on there, and you've got a pretty good idea what it'll look like. And now there's another one here that I have to show you. The first one I showed, I think I'll use as kind of like a beginner's lightsaber. There's different kinds of soundboards and electronics of different complexities out there. And I might take the opportunity to use a lower end board and work with, all the electronics in there, just so I can get more practice and figure out how these things work and get a real taste for how this is. And then what I'm going to do is probably move on to this one. This one is a real long beast of a lightsaber. And this is not going to be part of the design for real. Like, I'm going to replace this with a metal shroud. But just to give you an idea of the profile here, we got these grip sections here, this sort of traditional looking round pommel with the gear work on here. Little control box. No switches installed just yet because I gotta drill holes into the actual handle section here. This section with the thin neck and the grenade grip section is very reminiscent of Obi-Wan's original saber from the first movie in the 70s. Again, I have some material, some aluminum tubing that is perfectly sized to fit over this piece, and that I can cut out into the shape here, as you can see. Maybe I'll do that little slit down the middle there and everything. Down here you can see how there's all these little hole vents where the light can pass through, and another blade plug here. This one, however, comes from a maker known as Sith Bunny, and he makes some pretty cool designs. This is the one I like the most. Has this little crystal thing on the top here surrounded by copper and copper wrapped black cog sections made out of 3D printed plastic. And it looks pretty cool when it's all lit up, but unfortunately I can't really show that off. I just viewed the plug in my other saber here and saw that it looked pretty cool lit up. But anyway, I can show you another picture of how that saber will look when it's all painted up and everything. And you can see it's a predominantly dark black colored lightsaber. Those grooves down on the handle section will be left aluminum. Different light accents here and there. And the part I like the most, I think, is the whole top section with the thin neck and the grenade grip. I'm going to be painting the lower section of that neck red, the upper section gold, and have black inner detailing in the cracks and crevices of that grenade section. I might weather it up a little bit, or I might do something like black chrome on the other areas or something. I'm not exactly sure, but as far as the general color scheme goes, this is sort of what it's going to look like. And last, but definitely not least, there's one other project that I have purchase parts for, but I'm definitely going to wait to build them until I'm really well experienced with this. Here you can see the picture of what I'm planning. This is going to be a Skyrim themed lightsaber. Just like my Vader's Vault Wrath is based on Lord of the Rings, this lightsaber is something I'm going to design after the game Skyrim. It's going to have the Nordic steel calligraphy designs that come off of those steel weapons from the game. It's going to have these like wood grain areas that I'll achieve through hydro dipping. Basically, you buy this special film, you lay it on the water, you spray an activator on it, and anything that you dip through the film adheres to it, and then you get this new design or texture on it. And I thought a wood grain texture would look good to make it look like it's actually made out of wood. Then there's going to be areas of the saber that are sprayed with this stone texture stuff. And if you've played Skyrim, you know that the dragon word walls are made out of stone with the words carved into them, and that's how you learn your different shouts throughout the game. I'm going to basically have one section near the front end there with the stone pattern and texturing, and some carving and lettering engraved in there that spells the dragon language word for brother. And so this is probably going to be a gift for my brother once it's actually finished. I'm going to have a stitched leather grip around the handle area. That's going to be reminiscent of some of the actual weapons in the game. You know, give it a nice sort of weathered look, but not too much. I have this custom blade plug idea I can sort of show you. You know, I purchased a few odds and ends, a little bit of jewelry off of Etsy, and a faucet nozzle, and the two fit together perfectly, and I attached that to the end of this disassembled shaver head, and stick that on the end of an acrylic tube, and when you shine some light through it, it looks just like something that belongs in the game, but with a touch of Star Wars to it. So, not only am I going to design this thing to look like something from Skyrim, but I'm also going to do my best to design some sound fonts that resemble what it's like to actually be playing the game. And I actually purchased a kind of soundboard that will allow me to have music play in the background while you can swing this thing around. So there can be the Skyrim main theme while you're swinging this Skyrim lightsaber around, hearing these like sword and energy noises, maybe some dragon noises or something. It's just gonna be the coolest thing I've probably ever made in my life, and I'm pretty excited about getting started on that. But again, that's going to come down the road quite a bit later. I want to get some practice in on my other two before I'd even try to tackle that, because it's going to be a whole lot more difficult than any of the others. So, I believe that covers everything there is to say about lightsabers for now. If there's anything more to share, I'll be sure to talk about it if you guys are interested in hearing. And I hope you look forward to it. And I think the only other thing to really mention lately is about the North American Eclipse that just happened recently. I was able to witness it, only a little bit though. My area was covered up in clouds for most of the day, so I wasn't able to see much, but I was able to get a couple pictures. I rigged up a system. As you may remember, I went to school for welding, so I had a couple welding helmets. I have one that was a standard, black filter, and one that was an auto darkening. So I took the standard black filter and stuck it on the back of the auto darkened one and pointed that up in the clouds. And you could see just perfectly without it blinding you. I'm not noticing any white spots or anything. I can still see the camera, so I think we're good. I think I survived. and I managed to get a couple good pictures. They turn out a little green here because of the filtering, and the haziness is due to the excessive cloud cover, but hopefully you'll be able to appreciate these pictures. At least they're more for me than they are for anything else, because now I have some remembrance that I was there, and I did actually get some kind of record of having seen it, which was the more important thing to me. But anyway, I'm sure there are a lot better pictures, and maybe you've even taken some yourself. If you do have any cool pictures of the eclipse, feel free to share it. I'm always interested in seeing things like that. Astronomy or space things are always pretty cool. So if you have anything like that, feel free to share. So anyway, I am sure this video has dragged on well long enough. And once more, though, I would like to apologize for having been gone on such a long hiatus. But hopefully, now that I'm in the process of making some life changes here, maybe in the short term or long term, I'll be back towards a more regular life where I can start posting videos more often. And like I said, I do have that one video that I took of all of my trip out west most recently here. And there's a few other things I've done over the summer and the spring that I'd like to share videos of as well, little events and things I've been to. And I hope if you see those that you enjoy them as well. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying subscribed and for staying with the channel for all this time. And until the next time, I'll catch you later, everybody.